It's the finals of Grand Prix Sacramento. TJ Rogers here alongside Paul Rietzel. It has been a long weekend for these players, and we have been through it all, and this is the final match for them. They are fighting for it all, and it's going to be explosive apparatus coming down for John Walski, turn one.
Yeah, and John Walski has really impressed me with his play and kind of drafting ability over the last couple rounds, but he's facing a tough matchup here in Richard Liu. A really nice version of that white-black deck, and he's going to have his hands cut out for his task set out for him here.
Yeah, and we've got Druid of the Cal coming down on that second turn, so this is going to be a way for him to accelerate right in to the fourth turn, and that's going to get followed up by a Child of Night. 2-1 does not line up well against that Druid of the Cal.
Yeah, and I think John Walski needed that island, and when you're running good, you're running good. He finds an island for turn 3, and now turns on a much wider swath of his deck.
And it's going to be the Aven Windmage coming down, and it's a 2-2 with flying in the air for 3 mana. Also, any of those instants or sorceries are going to give it a boost. And we're going to see Leonin Vanguard and an Ajani's Pridemate come down together. And this is going to be great because at the beginning of combat, if you control 3 or more creatures, you get to gain 1 life. The Vanguard gets +1/+1. That's going to put a +1/+1 counter onto your Ajani's Pridemate as well. That is a 3-3. And the other Vanguard up to a 2-2, not going to be getting aggressive because of that Summoning Sickness. And Child of Night, not looking to get into a tangle with that Druid of the Cal.
Yeah, and really importantly, a Johnny's Pridemate up to 3-3, getting it out of the range of explosive apparatus and forcing John to kind of, get a 1/1 creature off the board before the Johnny's Pridemate gets totally out of control. But as we've seen, these black-white decks have plenty of other ways to continue to grow a Johnny's Pridemate, and it's going to be a big thorn in John Walski's side.
Yeah, that Aven Windmage is going to get aggressive, not really looking to block with it, and that Pridemate now getting into the red zone. That is going to be 3 damage and a Demon of Catastrophes getting rid of that Child of Night. Now paired with a 6/6 flying trample. Sure, when it enters you have to sacrifice a creature, but this feels like a pretty good exchange.
Yeah, and John Walski actually fairly well equipped to deal with it. 2 copies of Totally Lost in his deck. I don't know if he has one in his hand. Wow.
Whoa, there it is. So Totally Lost is going to put that right up top, and what that means is that if Richard Liu wants to redeploy this card, he's going to need to sacrifice another creature. The only one currently available is this Ajani's Pridemate.
Yeah, devastating tempo player from John Walski, having exactly the right tool for the job.
And we're going to see a Rustwing Falcon and able to play out the land, play out the Falcon, sacrifice that one. The Demon of Catastrophes is back out, so rebuilt that fairly quickly, having access to that 1-mana creature.
Yeah, Richard really all in on this Demon now, right? He only has 1 card left in his hand.
And it's going to be Colossal Dreadmaw, so it's a 6/6 on the ground against a 6/6 in the air. Otherwise, that Ajani's Pridemate still looking for some life gain triggers. +1/+1 and Vigilance to the whole team, and that Demon of Catastrophes is going to get in for a beautiful 7 damage.
Yeah, and John down to 7 here, certainly facing two tough flyers.
Yeah, Angel of the Dawn, also a 3/3 flyer. Wasn't able to get aggressive, but next turn will be looking to do so. Both of them outclassing that Aven Windmage. Also, Druid of the Cal still out and about, hasn't been too active, and it looks like it's going to be that Skyrider Patrol coming down.
Really nice Skyrider Patrol here. The Patrol immediately... interesting. Okay, so he's just going to get aggressive. He wants to get this game over with.
Ooh, so that comes down. It's 4 mana. At the beginning of combat, he's able to pay a blue and a green to put a +1/+1 counter onto this Colossal Dreadmaw. That's going to give it flying until end of turn. So the response is to swing in with a 7/7 with flying and trample of our own. John Walski trying to really do unto others what was done unto him.
Yeah, but he's really taking a risk here, right? If you look at Richard, he has a pretty brutal counterattack that's going to require John to make some very uncomfortable blocks on his turn. So, but we've seen John win games completely out of nowhere, obviously having a copy of Prodigious Growth in his deck. So John wants to get this game over with, feels like he can't beat the Demon in the long term, and so John's kind of accelerating the pace.
Yeah, and if that Skyrider Patrol is able to survive whatsoever, then we're going to see that Colossal Dreadmaw also getting aggressive once again. Any attacks from Richard Liu might leave him without those flyers as blockers. He's going to stay conservative this time, just to Johnny's Pridemate getting into the red zone.
Yeah, and this is a situation where if Richard had basically anything, it would have been really bad news for John Walski. It seems like Richard probably does not have anything too high impact.
So that's just going to be coming in. John is going to take the hit, goes down to 4. Not too worried about that yet. Does not see any possibility of tricks that are going to deal that final 4 damage in black and white.
Yeah, and Richard had the option to just attack with everything this turn, and it would have forced John into some very uncomfortable blocks. Instead, he elects to just go the conservative route, and he's going to try to get into combat with this Colossal Dreadmaw. So now the shoe's on the other foot. If John has almost anything, Richard's in terrible shape.
We've got a Resko Swiftclaw coming down for Richard Liu. That leaves up 3 mana on the opposite side, and now John Walski heading into his turn and looking for the opportunity to grab this win from the hands of the Demon of Catastrophes and that Angel of the Dawn. Skyrider Patrol is going to be a really big engine in that one. To remind what that does, it is a 2/3 with flying. Also, at the beginning of combat on your turn, you can pay a blue and a green mana to give another target creature you control a +1/+1 counter, and it gains flying until end of turn. That's what we saw with that Dreadmaw last turn.
Yeah, and so if Richard had made an attack with all of his creatures on his last turn, he would have forced both the Aven Windmage and the Skyrider Patrol to enter combat, both chump block and drop John to 1, but could have very easily died on the counterattack to basically anything from John Walski. Instead, he's obviously indicating a willingness to show a double block, but I'm not sure if he wants to play a long game against Skyrider Patrol.
Looks like we are going to have a Sky Scanner coming down to the battlefield. And actually a Forest is going to be the draw. We do also have that Druid of the Cowl available for green mana. So currently, before the land, we have got 3 mana. This is going to bring us up to 4.
Yeah, and so, John obviously has the ability to attack with the Colossal Dreadmaw. Richard is indicating that he's willing to double block. I think that might be the kind of trade that John's okay with at this point. He has the advantage in the long game because of the Skyrider Patrol and really just wants to not risk dying to the Demon of Catastrophes out of nowhere.
And that's what we're going to see. Colossal Dreadmaw getting that +1/+1 counter up to an 8/8 with Trample. Also getting aggressive with that flying. Only Angel of the Dawn and the Demon of Catastrophes can block it. This is a dangerous spot to be in. It's not a lethal swing, though, so it looks like this might be a no block. A risky way to go about it, but that means that Richard's going to fall down to 1 and try and deal that last 4 points of damage right here.
Wow, and a huge draw for Richard.
Oh no, Angel of the Dawn comes down, Essence Scatter to protect it. 2 mana from John Walski. He has eliminated that card from affecting the battlefield, and Richard's got to get it done with the tools that he has. Can John, using this, he's got the Sky Scanner, he's got the Skyrider Patrol, he's got this Aven Windmage. All he needs to do is take less than 4 damage. Remember, that Demon of Catastrophes does have trample.
Yeah, if you put Skyrider Patrol in front of the Demon of Catastrophes and just blocks the other 3 creatures, then he wins.
Wow.
I'm not sure who won. Did John just concede?
I think that might have been, I think we're going to get another update. Both players kind of picking it up, and it's possible that he just declared the right blocks, and Richard conceded.
No, looks like Richard won.
That was Richard, so John did not. We might have had to our math a little bit.
Yeah, maybe
wrong.
I had the math off there.
That's possible. I mean, that was 6 trample coming in from that Demon of Catastrophes. That's quite a bit to contend with. So I think that is going to be that win for Richard Liu, and we are going to be heading into Game 2, a phenomenal start.
Did he have to tap the Druid of the Cowl? Was that one of the blockers?
So
that was one of the blockers that he needed in order to get in front of the creature. So I guess the math didn't work out in terms of John being able to make enough blockers there. So that Angel was a huge draw, forcing John to tap Druid of the Cowl to cast Essence Scatter.
And that's exactly what he needed to get the final points of damage in. So now we are heading into the sideboard, and Richard Liu has got to feel excellent. Made that Demon of Catastrophes through a totally lost into it.
It's funny. I talking about how tired you can get after 2 days of long play. These guys have been through 15 rounds, 3 drafts. They're in the top 8. They're in the finals. They're both playing faster than my brain can work. So it's super impressive stuff from both Richard and John, and congrats to both of them on getting this far. And Richard 1 game away from $10,000.
Yeah, and it's really just showing something that you've been reiterating, that these players came prepared.
Yeah, more prepared than me, apparently, missing that combat math.
And, of course, John Walski, his deck looked phenomenal. He had that Skyrider Patrol, made some very aggressive attacks. Looks like, that Colossal Dreadmaw really trying to close the game out as quickly as possible. Do you think that was the right call, or was maybe trying to wait a little bit another option he could have taken?
No, he had to kind of try to close the game out right here. I think a situation where he had the first totally lost for the demon, but Richard correctly identified the kind of the role that he was supposed to play in the game, was willing to just sacrifice another creature to get the demon back on the battlefield right away, risk another bounce spell. John didn't have it, and then eventually the demon was able to take it home for him. So
yeah, and we are going to be taking a look. This is a matchup between blue-green as well against black-white.
yeah, and again, too early in the format to really know which one of those is favored in a vacuum. I can say that Richard has a particularly difficult version for John to deal with because of how low to the ground he gets. We saw him obviously be able to get the Ajani Pridemate grown right away out of range of explosive apparatus. He can be very aggressive with tons of 1 and 2 drops. John, really needs a little bit of time to get his game plan assembled. His deck really doesn't start, fully operating until turn 3.
And of course, like you mentioned, Richard Liu, a whole host of those 1-mana cards available. He's got 3 copies of the Leonin Vanguard, which is the 1/1 that with 3 or more creatures starts getting you those life gain triggers, grows in size. Also that Rustwing Falcon. So really trying to get to a very fast 3 creatures on the battlefield to enable that life gain, which helps out a lot of the other triggers that are in this deck, like the Regal Bloodlord or the Ajani's Pridemate.
Yeah, and I've been super impressed. I think black-white as an archetype is really one of the major stories of the weekend. Just how impressive the life gain synergies have been. The fact that it's able to both play that aggressive game and the long game. It has ways to gain repetitive advantages through cards like Regal Bloodlord, high card quality with things like Skymarch Bloodletter and the Vampire Neonate we've seen be so effective over the course of the weekend. And now, Richard, obviously up a game with his opponent mulliganing to 6 cards is pretty close to a Grand Prix championship.
Yeah, and John is going to be on the play as well, so really kind of down 2 cards, because when you are on the play, you don't draw on your first turn. So Richard Liu is going to be up a card through that, as well as this mulligan.
Yeah, and John, we've seen mulligan before, and his deck actually comes back really nicely from mulligans, has many, many ways to draw cards and get deeper into his deck. So, mulligan is 6 a disadvantage, but certainly not a death blow.
Rustwing Falcon here for Richard Liu. This is going to be the 1/2 for 1 mana. It's got flying, so it's got a little bit of evasion, a small bit of power, but there we go. Knight's Pledge on it. Immediately, Plummet is going to take it down. A 2 for 1 on the second turn of the game.
Yeah, absolutely huge for John Walski. I mean, you've mulliganed, you're on the play, your opponent has basically the best possible draw, and you're able to 2 for 1 them with a 2-mana card, a 2-mana common. So John right back in this game.
Yeah, and that Rustwing Falcon, that was a pretty sizable investment of 3 mana. The 2-mana card takes it down. Ajani's Pridemate, Essence Scatter is going to answer that. The board is still clear, and John Walski feeling pretty confident as a Sky Scanner comes down, draws a card.
Yeah, and John, despite the mulligan, has entered the middle of this game in totally fine shape, and Richard is still waiting for black mana.
Yeah, Richard Liu sitting on plains, and that's just not where you want to be. He's even got a cavalry drill that he's not even looking to deploy at this point.
Yeah, the drill master obviously doesn't want to trade that off for the 1/1 Sky Scanner from John Walski, so he's going to wait for an opportunity to maybe use the trigger.
And we are going to fire this one down as a 2/1, still not finding any of those colors that we need. John Walski, and that looked like a skilled animator to me. And if it is, this Sky Scanner just became a 5/5.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, how quickly things change, right? Richard, a couple minutes ago, looked like he was going to be able to ride a turn 2, 3, 4 flyer to a trip to a Grand Prix championship, a plummet, and then a few creatures from John later. And now Richard's way on the back foot. So I've certainly been in his shoes and Richard's shoes where I felt like I was about to win the Grand Prix up a game and end up not winning. So, he's certainly not out of this game, and he certainly has another game after that. But John, overcoming an early mulligan, no problem.
Yeah, every time he mulligans, he seems to just really make it happen.
Yeah.
So we finally do get a swamp out on the battlefield, and it is going to be a 2-headed zombie that comes down, but we've still got this 5/5 Sky Scanner because of that skilled animator, which, as a 1/3, as long as it's on the battlefield, that Sky Scanner is going to be a 5/5. An Aven Windmage and a Dryad Greenseeker coming down as well, getting aggressive for 7. Richard Liu is at 2 life.
Yep, but he did draw the second swamp to be able to cast Lich's Caress here, so...
Lich's Crest is going to destroy that 5/5. It's also going to gain 3 life for Richard Lewis, so that is going to be a nice little way to buffer this life total. Now it is just a 2/2, and that's the 2/2 can get in. Richard Lewis is going to find himself down to 3. John Walski still very comfortably at 20 life.
Yeah, and one option we've seen John not utilize strategically so far is to be able to use the Dryad Green Seeker on his upkeep to be able to increase the quality of his draw on a key turn. He had the chance right there to upkeep the Dryad Green Seeker, would have found a forest, and then he would have gotten 1 card deeper. Obviously, that trick only works one time because then you have to start using it on your upkeep every time, but he would have had access to this card 1 turn earlier.
And that's going to be a pass back, so setting that one back, that's going to be his draw for the turn as he heads into untapping a Regal Bloodlord and a Vampire Neonate on the battlefield, which means that if Richard gets to untap, he's going to start producing those bats. He's also going to start buffering his life total a little bit. He's very close to stabilizing right now.
Yeah, but at a very precarious 3 points of life. So Richard needed basically running swamps to get into this game, but Lich's Caress, obviously, we've seen allow players to make massive comebacks in the past.
All right, and it looks like it is going to be this Aven Wind Mage that comes into play. The Regal Bloodlord is going to block it, and then we combine that with an explosive apparatus to eliminate that Regal Bloodlord from the battlefield. Now it is just the Vampire Neonate, will not be producing any of those bats.
Yeah, so John basically thinks that he can't win against the engine of just producing a bat every turn, so he's willing to take the 2-for-1 on himself.
Knightly Valor coming down on that menacing 2-headed zombie. It is a 4/2 that suddenly becomes a 6/4 with Vigilance. Richard is finding his way back into this game, was hugely on his back foot after a couple of really nice plays in the early game by John Walski. Now it's a Daggerback Basilisk coming down to the battlefield, which can get in the way of this zombie, but it requires 2 creatures. That's still got menace. It needs 2 or more creatures to block the zombie.
Yeah, Daggerback Basilisk, a nice draw, right? He's got the skilled animator sitting out there, not really doing much, so happy to combine that with the Daggerback Basilisk to trade off for a 6/4 menace.
I think we've got an Inspired Charge in hand as well, so that's going to be a consideration. Turning that 2-headed zombie, I think that's more just demonstrating that it's attacking. We do see it now untapped because it does have that Vigilance. And we are just going to throw blocks in front of these 2 creatures. We have got the 1/3 in front of the 2/2. We've got the 1/3 in front of the 2/1.
If he does have Inspired Charge here, it's absolutely brutal.
That does end up increasing the damage output to 8 alone from the 2-headed zombie. That's going to be it. Inspired Charge coming down, +2/+1 to the team. It's going to be the Root Snare coming down. We saw it before. We see it again. John Walski getting his opponents to invest into these really powerful attacks and then just taking it all away.
How many times has it seemed like John Walski is out of this tournament and Root Snare buys him the time that he needs to get back into it? I mean, it's crazy.
I was told that Fog is not a good effect in Limited. Was I misinformed?
The amount of times that it's bought him tempo, gained him 10 to 15 life, kept all of his creatures alive. It's had an outsized impact. And, I would not recommend trying this at home unless you know your opponent is about to Inspire Charge you for the full amount.
So Rock's Oracle comes down to the battlefield. That's the 4/2 for 5. Redrawn a card, and it's going to be Gallant Cavalry coming down. That's going to be a 2/2 with Vigilance. It's going to be another 2/2 with Vigilance.
Possibly a missed Dryad Green Seeker activation there from John. So I think in his excitement of survival, he may have missed a chance to dig a little bit deeper.
Ooh, unfortunate. And if that was a land that was his draw for the turn, that is going to be backbreaking, especially when he is already down a game here in the finals.
Yep, so just wants to calm down here. He's gotten himself back into this game with the Daggerback Basilisk and the Root Snare, but he is facing, a board full of creatures, so he does need to find more action.
Leonin Vanguard coming down to the battlefield as well. This is going to be the continuation of what Richard Lou has been doing with his Vampire Neonate. That's been gaining a life each turn. Sure, it's draining John Walski as well, but this Vampire totally lost is going to eliminate that, get rid of that Knightly Valor, so we do lose that. Now it is nothing but small creatures, but Richard is gaining quite a bit of life right now.
Yeah, basically, but if John can get this Vampire Neonate off the board somehow, he really has this thing nicely stabilized. And we know John has a spell in his hand, right? It's something that it's a non-land from the Dryad Green Seeker, so it could easily be something like Counter Magic or Pump.
Yeah, and he is in a position where there's not a whole lot of spells that he can't cast, that he can't afford.
Right.
So it's got to be something that can operate at the instant speed. It's going to be that two-headed zombie coming back to the battlefield. We knew that that was going to be the draw because it was put on top of the library with that, and we are going to see the Green Seeker show a forest off the top. That means that John is going to enter into this with 2 cards in hand. An island comes down to the battlefield. Maybe he just drew a couple of lands for that turn.
Yeah, and his card in hand could be something like Prodigious Growth. It could be something like an Essence Scatter that he chose not to use. But, Richard here has a pretty attractive Alpha Strike. So,
Prodigious Growth on a Death Touch creature, by the way. Amazing.
Yep. But doing some math here. He's kind of lining up this possible Alpha Strike. The blocks that John has, if John doesn't have something like Titanic Growth in his hand, do not seem that attractive. And at 9, John can't just take it. So,
notably, every creature that isn't the two-headed zombie that is attacking right now has 2 power. That Leonin Vanguard, because that beginning of combat trigger did get +1/+1, so this is all increments of 2 damage and the two-headed zombie with Menace.
And because of all the life that Richard's been gaining from his Leonin Vanguard and his Vampire Neonate, he doesn't really fear dying on the Counter-Strike.
It's going to be 6 damage that comes in here. We're going to throw the Daggerback Basilisk and this Rock's Monk in front, or I'm sorry, Rock's Oracle in front of the two-headed zombie. Otherwise, these 1/3s just jumping in front of a couple of these 2/2s. We're going to draw a spell for the turn for John Walski. And it looks like he is liking this one. Is this maybe the Skyrider Patrol?
He really needs multiple things here.
Scholar of Stars, but no artifact out, so he doesn't get the cantrip attached to it. That's just going to be a 3/2 facing down this wall of 2 power creatures as well as this Vampire Neonate. John Walski is at 2 life. This Vampire Neonate is getting it done. That's the handshake, and that is going to be Richard Liu as the champion of Grand Prix Sacramento. You can see him now just breathing a sigh of relief after that start. Oh my goodness, what a way to claw back into this game. I think his life total was as low as 4 at one point.
Yeah, he was sitting there with 3 planes facing an overwhelming board in Game 2 right there. We were talking about him, needing to potentially move to Game 3. His deck blessed him with back-to-back swamps to cast the Lich's Caress. Lich's Caress we saw all weekend let players come back, and Richard's really powerful black-white deck has, propelled him to a Grand Prix championship.
And we see him grabbing that trophy now. He's going to be getting into position to actually have a interview with us from the floor, so we are going to have an opportunity in just a moment to talk to him after this amazing run that he has had. Just incredible, and that black-white deck taking him all the way to Grand Prix champion here in Sacramento.
Yeah, and great run, John Walski, as well. I mean, we talked about it before. He took down some of the titans of kind of the competitive circuit on his way to the top 8, ripped through the top 8, played some really exciting matches, cast some of the most exciting root snares I think I've ever seen in my life. So John Walski gave us quite a run as well, and good run for him. Richard Liu, congratulations to him. I mean, I think black-white, those Lich's Caress, the life gain, the versatility, the power level, that was really one of the stories of the weekend, and we saw, I think fittingly, win the championship, a really nice version of it, coming back in Game 2 there from really what seemed to be a horrible situation. So congrats to him.
Yeah, and one thing that I thought was really notable at the end there is that there wasn't a lot of haymakers on the battlefield. We saw right at the end this black-white deck with some very powerful payoffs, the Regal Bloodlord, even the Johnny's Pridemate. But that match was taken, and that game was taken by a slew of 2/2s with Vigilance.
2/2s, yeah.
It got done.
Pure good, down in the mud magic, the way I like to do it, and the way you expect the core set to go. So it sounds like we're going to be able to hear from Richard and get his thoughts.
Yeah, let's head on right down to him. He's coming off of this huge win. Richard Liu, it's TJ Rogers alongside Paul Rietzel. You've got to be feeling great. Tell us a little bit. What is your story heading into this tournament?
I originally wasn't going to play the main event because I don't play a lot of limited, but ultimately I decided to because I was kind of close to bronze, and I guess it ended up working out okay for me.
Richard, congratulations. Paul Rietzel here. Obviously $10,000 Pro Tour invite. You got all the pro points now and that awesome looking trophy there. What I want to know is what it felt like to draw that second swamp that you needed to cast that Lich's Caress in Game 2, because you needed it that turn,
yeah.
right? It had to be a swamp.
Yeah.
What does that feel like?
I literally said if I draw a swamp, we can actually play a game.
Right.
And I guess I drew a swamp, so it felt pretty good to do that.
Yeah, I mean, you were sitting there with 3 planes and then swamp, swamp, swamp. So congratulations.
Yeah, no, it was. I mean, his draw was pretty bad too, but because he didn't have any follow up for his plays. But yeah, I got lucky in the end. So
Awesome.
And Richard Liu, walking into this building, you weren't even planning on playing in the main event. You've been playing Magic for 20 years, and now you are holding the trophy. You are the champion of Sacramento. How are you feeling just after this 2 grueling days?
Honestly, when I made top 8, I felt like I was on top of the world. Like, I've been playing this game for so long, and I've had so many near misses. Trying to queue for the Pro Tour, but and I never quite got there. So finally making the Pro Tour felt great. Winning, I'm still trying to process actually winning a Grand Prix. That's gonna take a little bit longer, but yeah, it feels really good. Yeah.
Well, you played great. Congratulations, Richard, and we'll see you at the next Pro Tour.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Absolutely incredible. I can't even believe that he was in a position where he wasn't planning on playing in the main event, and now 2 days later, he gets to hoist that trophy.
Yeah, I love stories like that, and now he's going to get the chance to celebrate with his friends, and like I said, he's got the $10,000. Obviously, he's made bronze at this point, and 8 pro points, and sometimes these can be the springboard to successful pro careers. After being in this game for a long time, I still get chills when I see someone who's put that much effort, played the game for that long, and now they finally break through. And I guess I just hope he isn't in my pod at the next Pro Tour. I don't want to face Richard Liu.
Yeah, it's something that we were talking a little bit earlier, and I've heard you over here. Just one thing that you love is watching people exceed at what they're doing. And now Richard, he's going to get to that Pro Tour that he's been so shy of. He's had those near misses that he talked about. This has got to be an enormous amount of vindication of his efforts.
Yeah, awesome. And I can totally identify with what he said. There's relief. There's kind of that ecstasy of making the top 8, and the winning the tournament is almost cherry on top. But when he sits back and thinks about it in about 10 minutes, and the adrenaline starts to leave his body, he's gonna be like, "Oh my God, I am a Grand Prix champion. I'm going to the Pro Tour." It's a dream come true. So congrats to him, and what a weekend.
Yeah, and of course that is going to bring us towards the end of Grand Prix Sacramento here. It has been quite a weekend. I want to take this opportunity just to thank the people who are here in the venue, the players, the judges, the production crew, as well as the staff that is running the convention center itself. We also want to take this opportunity to thank all of you, the viewers, for tuning in, sharing this experience with us, sharing this experience with Richard, who's going to be going to the Pro Tour. I mean, this is just such a phenomenal weekend for so many people. And coming up, we've also got Grand Prix Minneapolis. That's going to be next weekend, and it's going to be another look into this limited format.
Yeah, and I love it. I mean, I'll be there in Minneapolis getting to experience the evolution of a limited format, as it starts to continue to blossom. And we're so early in it. There's still so many things. You see even players from Pod 1 to Pod 2 experiencing and learning and trying new things. And, this weekend, white, black on top. We'll see what happens next weekend.
Yep. And so it's about time to wrap things up here in Grand Prix Sacramento from all of us here in the venue, whether it is good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. Thank you so much for joining, and we'll see you next time.